Before I start, I thought I'd mention that we're not going to do a Toastmasters evaluation of this, although that would be recursive. Instead, we're going to have, Eric is going to be leading, and I'll be up here as well, a group discussion on what we could do to improve this and what things you got out of it. So, my view of evaluation is, it's the golden rule. You want to give an evaluation that you want to get. You want to have the person get constructive feedback, and you want to receive constructive feedback. And in order to do that, you have to be an informed listener. And I tried to produce some materials rather than using overheads and everything. There's one sheet here that kind of is a snapshot summary of everything we're going to talk about. So if you see some more things that you want me to put on there in the future, that'd be great. If you want to take your own notes, this would be a good place to do it. Since you need to be an informed listener, if you're going to do a good evaluation, you need to be involved before you walk into this room. You need to know that you're going to actually evaluate. You need to know who you're going to evaluate. That's why I said you ought to contact the Toastmaster. If it isn't clear on the schedule who you're going to be evaluating, go talk to the Toastmaster. They have control of the meeting. They can rearrange. Also, email the speaker. Find out what project they're doing. Most of the speeches you'll see in this club are going to be from the Competent Communicator Manual, but there will be more advanced speeches. If they're more advanced speeches, it's really up to the advanced speaker to provide you the information of what to expect in that speech. And when you find out what the project is, go look in the manual or get I hate to say it, but if you Google, you can find every single Toastmaster manual section online. They are copyrighted, but other clubs and people have made them available. So, and if you're an advanced speaker, I see no problem with fair use of take a scan, send a copy of the evaluation section of that to your evaluator ahead of time. So the person comes in with an informed view of what to expect in the speech. And to get that view, you need to look at the little box that says what the objectives, and the main thing is the questions at the end. When you look at that assignment, you should also understand what happened before that. So if the person's on Project 5 and they're supposed to be using gestures, and Project 4 is vocal variety, you should expect that the person should be able to use the same skills that were in the earlier speeches, in the later speeches. When you actually get to the meeting, make sure you get the manual ahead of time. And we have manuals in at least the evaluation sections in the box in the back. So if you don't have your manual and you're doing a speech, you can get it. It's part of being prepared. The other part is a lot of times we have new speakers, people that you don't know. Walk over and introduce yourself. Have a short conversation with that person. Find out what things they want to work on. If the person wants this to work on the fact that they're always swaying back and forth, they'll tell you ahead of time. Write that down. If you need to, put it as an additional question on the evaluation form. When the speaker is finally giving the speech, eyes to the speaker, not eyes to the paper. You want to be listening. You want to be paying attention to the speaker. As far as notes go, I discovered 3 different ways people do speech evaluations. And I tried to give you the 3 different forms to give you the examples. The first one, there's only some of them, is the checklist one. This is the kind of contest style of speech evaluation. It tries to capture everything. It tries to put down check boxes for everything, give a grade. I'll give you a hint. Toastmasters is not about grades. You can't fail a speech. It's not about giving a numeric score for a speech. We don't judge who's the best speaker of the day. So I don't really like that form. But there is uses for that form. And I think the real use for that form is if you're giving a speech here that you're going to give multiple other places and you want to make sure that all the parts of that speech are covered, that's a useful form. But for the 90% of all the communicator speeches we give in here, that's not really an effective tool. So if the right way to give an evaluation is not to be picking all the nits and judging, what is the right way? Well, you may have heard the term whitewashing. A whitewash evaluation is when the evaluator just says, oh, everything was so wonderful, I really loved your speech. That's not what you want to do. You want to actually observe and see what's happening in the speech. So the next kind of evaluation form is the smaller one, the little one. That's actually a Toastmaster standard form. That basically deals with what do you see during the speech? What do you hear about the speech? It's very open-ended, generic. And that's a really useful tool to give you some insight of what kinds of things you need to be looking for. The problem that I have with that form is it's totally a passive form. It really just says, what did you see? What did you hear? What did you feel? It's an audience feedback form. And really the best kind of evaluation for me is what I call the coach evaluation, where somebody goes and gives you not only what they saw, but a recommendation about how to change something. You may say, how the heck can you, an inexperienced speaker, give an evaluation of an advanced speaker? Because that's really a common problem. Well, I give you a hint. Tiger Woods' golf coach doesn't beat Tiger Woods. He sees the fact that Tiger Woods twists his head. He doesn't do it, he just sees it. So you can really give feedback on somebody who's very much more advanced than you, even if you aren't able to do it yourself. And in fact, John Golby, who's one of our members, his website's on here. One of his things is he actually has a written evaluation of the Toastmasters World Champion Speaker written out on there. Now, John's more advanced than I think everybody in this room, but I would argue that the World Champion Toastmaster speaker is light years past that. So you get an idea that you can give good feedback and recommendations even when you're not at that level. So to do that, that's why I made up this last form. And this actually comes from a couple other sources. And what I just tried to do was make it really simple. Just put down some basic things, figure out what you like, figure out expand your core recommendation, and a closing comment, so that you've got the three things that you want to cover easily visible. And I want to make another point, which I don't do it as much as I should, and I know that it's really hard. It's real easy to see what somebody had trouble doing. What you really want to find is what things they did the best. I hate to use the athletic example all the time, but if you talk to any coach, they say, if you're a sprinter, you don't practice going distance. You just do it enough that it's not your problem. You practice sprinting. So if we have somebody who comes up here and their great strength is vocal variety, find it. Tell them what they did well. Tell them how it helped their speech, because that's just as important as telling them that they were moving around a lot. So that's why the I like section is just as important as the recommendation. Finally, and this is where I'll pass it off to Eric after this, who will deal with delivering the evaluation, you should figure out, of all the things you see, what is the core thing that really that speaker should work on next? And go back to the golf coach. The golf coach will see you and see me and see how terrible I am. And a good coach will say, the three things you ought to work on now is you ought to keep your head down and look at the ball and follow through. Well, he didn't tell me about my grip. He didn't tell me about my hair, my hat, my pants, whatever. Those weren't important. He may have seen them, but that's not what he recommended. He basically found the key skill I should work on and made that recommendation. So I like to use another example, which is I find in my work, I guess it's not a common thing, but there was something called bike shedding. It turned out that Parkinson wrote about it years ago. If you are in a group of people and you're asked to design a nuclear power plant, nobody will give you any recommendations. They all think it's so difficult. You have to build a bike shed, everybody will give you recommendations. I think too often in Toastmasters, we do the kind of bike shedding thing where we all know what vocal variety is. We all know about pitch. We all know about movement. We really have to get down to what is the key recommendation for that speech, for what that person's trying to do. So I'll give it to